Have you ever heard people talk about a huge spiritual event happening right before the end of the age? This idea, it's called the end time harvest. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what that means, where the idea even comes from, and why it's such a compelling, powerful concept for millions of believers.
So let's just dive right in with the biggest question of all. What in the world is the end time harvest? Okay, at its heart, it's the belief in one last massive spiritual moment. The idea is that right before Jesus returns, there's going to be this incredible surge of faith all across the globe, a kind of final great gathering of believers. That's the what. But what about the why? I mean, where does an idea like this even start? To really get it, we need to go back to its roots.
Well, for those who hold this belief, the answer is simple. It all goes back to the Bible. For them, this isn't some new idea. It's a concept they see woven into key passages, especially those that use farming and harvesting as a metaphor for God's final actions here on earth.
So take this parable from the Gospel of Matthew. For proponents, this is like Exhibit A. The roles are spelled out so clearly. Jesus is the one planting the seeds of faith, the entire world is the field, and the harvest, well, it's explicitly called the end of the age. You can see why for so many, this isn't just a nice story. It's the very foundation of this entire doctrine.
And then you have this passage from the book of Revelation, which many interpret as a sneak peek of what that finished harvest actually looks like. It talks about this huge crowd of believers standing before God, and that phrase, come out of the Great Tribulation, is absolutely key. To adherents, it suggests this all happens during or right after a time of major global crisis, really locking in that end times feeling. Now, it's also really important to note that this idea doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It actually slots perfectly into some very specific ways of interpreting end times prophecy. You hear terms like dispensationalism and premillennialism. These are basically frameworks that see a very literal step-by-step sequence of events leading up to Christ's return. And for them, a great final harvest just makes perfect sense in that timeline. Okay, so we've got the scriptural basis, but let's get a little more practical. If this harvest were to actually happen, what would it, look like? What are the signs believers are told to watch out for?
Right, so how would anyone even know what's happening? Well, according to this doctrine, the harvest would be marked by some really distinct and powerful features. It wouldn't be subtle. All right, let's walk through this. First up, a great spiritual awakening. We're not just talking about more people in church pews. This is about a deep, life-altering spiritual shift on a huge scale. And that awakening is expected to lead right into mass conversions, just a massive wave of people coming to faith. But here's the twist. This isn't seen as an easy time. It's actually predicted to come with increased persecution, a time where faith is really put to the test. And yet, somehow, through all that opposition, the period is expected to end in this incredible global unity, with believers from literally every corner of the earth coming together. Wow. It's a pretty compelling and detailed picture, isn't it? But with any major interpretation of Scripture, you've got to ask the big question. Is this the only way to see it? Is everyone on board with this? And the short answer to that is nope, not at all. This doctrine has its fair share of questions and criticisms, and it's really important that we take a look at those to get the full picture here. So critics tend to raise three main points. First, they point to what they call a lack of clear biblical teaching. They'd say, sure, the harvest metaphor's there, but building a whole doctrine of a single final event is reading way too much into it. Second is the uncertainty about timing. The Bible can be really tough to pin down on an exact timeline for this stuff. And third, there's a very practical worry, the risk of false prophets. The concern is that an exciting idea like this could be easily misused by charismatic leaders to manipulate people who are eagerly waiting for it. Okay, so we've looked at the belief and we've heard the criticisms. So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway here? For believers, what's the real message, no matter which side of the debate they land on? Whether someone sees the end-time harvest as a literal event coming soon or as a powerful metaphor for something else, it really serves one central purpose. It's a call to be spiritually ready. It encourages people to focus less on predicting the future and more on their faith right now, on their personal relationship with God. It's about being vigilant and faithful, no matter what tomorrow holds. And that really leaves us with one final thing to chew on. Is this ancient image of a harvest best understood as a literal doctrine about the future? Or is it a timeless metaphor for spiritual growth? In the end, what does the idea of a harvest really mean for us today?